Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the AI Dispatch.
Today we have a very special guest. We are going to be in conversation with James Ross, the founder of Mode Network. I'm going to dive into this evolving meta of DefAI. And so we're going to combine the power of AI with DeFi
DeFi.
and see how we'll have a unique L2 which is empowered to create a whole new agentic finance experience for all of us. So it's going to be a fun experience and lots for us to learn and digest. So let's go.
Let's dive in.
Hey guys! Excited to kick off this podcast today. I am in conversation with James, who is the founder of Mode Network, and Mode is essentially building an L2, which is focused on unlocking the agent meta in DeFi. So with that, welcome James. James, happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much. Super happy to be here. Yeah, excited to jump in.
Excited. Okay.
Tell us about yourself, like a little bit of background. What's your background, James? How long have you been in crypto, and what inspired you to start Mode?
Absolutely. So I've been in crypto for around 7 years. I've been very much focused on DeFi, building out DeFi strategies. I was pretty early participant in Ethereum community, and yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride. I think everyone who's managed to stick around has had a wild ride. But yeah, most recently, I started Mode. The goal was to focus on bringing like new DeFi innovations to market. We launched Mode with the support of a grant from Optimism, which helped us initially scale the chain. And we saw, yeah, really good early growth. We focused on yield-bearing assets, bringing those to L2s, and we saw TVL grow very, very quickly at the beginning of the year. Mode was launched pretty much exactly a year ago. Around 6 months ago, 7 months ago, we did our token sale, and we focused on really rethinking like what DeFi would be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and how people would interact with DeFi. And we came to the conclusion that AI is going to be this new UX layer, and agents are going to unlock a huge amount of opportunity for like the average user. There still might be pro users that, have their own tools, but agents or, agents that can do things like trade on behalf of a user, earn yield, manage risk would become a huge part of the future of blockchains. And I put out a statement that said that 80% of transactions are going to be run by agents by the end of 2025. And yeah, that has seemed to accelerate very quickly over the last few months. So it's a really exciting time to be building in this space.
I'm curious because we have so many chains now, like hundreds of them. So many teams which are building L2s. When you were starting out with the idea of Mode, were you concerned at all that it's going to be like it's difficult to attract the mind share necessary to solve the cold start problem? Especially with DeFi, you need to have liquidity providers. I mean, that's the fundamental layer that you kind of need to win. So talk about that journey and your thinking behind, okay, there is an opportunity to focus on DeFi and then to have the reasoning behind having a dedicated L2 for that.
Absolutely. So I think any new network, any new blockchain network needs some kind of DeFi ecosystem to really like scale. So even if you have a gaming ecosystem, it's going to have a marketplace or an exchange, right? And it needs to have liquidity, it needs to have assets, it needs to have all these things. So it's essentially building a small DeFi ecosystem. So DeFi is like a natural place to start. And it's possible to bring LPs and all these different participants if there is some kind of incentive, right? And you can model that and you can make that happen. I think it's probably a bit harder now because there's hundreds of chains, so LPs have different opportunities and yields are fairly high, so maybe it's costly to do that, but it's still possible. I think like when we started Mode, like our goal has always been to push like innovation and push protocols that are doing something different, and really see like how far we can or how, like the teams that we can support know that we're here to support them doing something different and doing something interesting. Over the last 6 months, we focused very much on like AI and DeFi use cases. We've seen loads of great teams. We ran Accelerator, multiple hackathons. We've seen a lot of success supporting these types of teams. Like the first DeFi agents to be launched have been launched on Mode. So yeah, we're kind of seeing like we're like at the very start of this new wave, right? Of this agent fi, AI fi, DeFi. And so yeah, I think there's still like a lot that can be done. I think when you look at competing on like just AI, it's very hard because there are large centralized organizations, companies that have a huge amount of manpower, control, compute, right? So it's going to be very hard for just a small startup to compete there.
Yeah.
Equally, when you look at DeFi, like the market has very much been established. There are some new innovations coming to market, which I think are very cool. There's new types of AMMs, there's new types of lending protocols, but the market's fairly established, so it can be hard to kind of break through there. But when you look at like this intersection of DeFi and AI, you have like a huge amount of opportunity. Um, so yeah, there's still so much to be done, so much to be built, so much to be experimented with. And I think, yeah, we've seen a lot of great builder energy because we're kind of supporting people building at this
You know,
intersection.
you bring up something interesting. I just want to kind of rewind back to before 6 months when you actually started looking at the agent space. That TVL was growing, and you were looking at these new DeFi primitives, restaking, yield-bearing
Hmm.
assets, and that gave you that tailwind for like really fast growth, right, of your TVL, of your chain's TVL. Where did you feel like, because, we look at the market kind of moving around with chasing the next narrative. That's where the money and
Hmm.
attention flows. Do you see there will be more stickiness this time around with agents until we find, the next shiny thing? Or is this something which we see as more fundamental for sustaining momentum, liquidity, attention, mindshare, developers, users for a chain?
So I think that there's a few things. I guess like we have to also think about like what success means for an L2 or an ecosystem or a product, right? So previously, most chains like or a key metric for success was TVL. So investors would ask how much TVL you got. Okay, when you get to 1 billion TVL, that's when we'll invest. And these were kind of the key metrics. I think that's actually shifted a lot over the last 6 months. And people aren't as concerned with TVL as like a core metric to success. They're much more interested with maybe users, maybe retention of users. And this is something I think that we will see like agents positively contribute to. Um, and I think this is also a very positive change in the ecosystem as a whole, that we've moved away from just valuing TVL as a core metric, saying, oh, this chain has 500 million TVL, their token should be worth 1 billion. In some senses, it makes sense, especially if there's like fees associated with the TVL. That can make sense, right? It's a revenue generating protocol based on TVL. Makes sense, value it that way. But for some other chains, it doesn't make that much sense. So I think there's that. The second thing is that like our core goal has always been to push innovation, and we hope that people will value the ecosystem based on the innovation within it. Um, and we've seen like a huge amount of progress with ecosystem teams building agents that might look fairly simple on the surface, but actually under the surface, they're doing very complex things like effectively managing risk. Then on the other side, we've been very focused internally at thinking about like what 0 to 1 innovations can we build ourselves. Um, And so, as part of that, we started working around 5, 6 months ago on a subnet to build out the world's most powerful synthetic data to be used by agents. And this has been like extremely successful. This subnet is live on BitTensor. It went live around 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, and we've seen it now rise the ranks, and I think it's a top 25 subnet out of 64 in an extremely competitive environment. And what this does is it essentially gives training data and forecasting data to agents. So something that when we were building out agents internally to do our trading, we didn't have access to this data. We had to create it ourselves. And we decided to leverage BitTensor's network of miners to create this synth subnet. And it's kind of interesting because synth subnet or subnets in general, are kind of like L2s, right? They're like their own network within the
Yeah.
BitTensor network, very focused on data. So yeah, we've been working hard on building out this data product, and it's live and being integrated with lots of different agents everywhere. So that's also quite cool.
So
Yeah.
this is like a data layer for AI agents.
Exactly, yeah. So that was the key thing we found that was missing when we were building out this stuff. We're like, okay, these agents can do these tasks, but for them to actually perform well, they need to have some kind of intelligence, right? And it's very difficult to build an intelligent agent when you're training it just on historical data, right? It's like if you want to build a car, like an autopilot, like Tesla's autopilot for your car, and you want to build it, you want to build this autopilot that everyone can use, that every
Yeah, you
autonomous
need
driving car
to
can use. Yeah,
you
you
need to
can't just,
generate you
yeah,
need to generate data from the scratch, which is what they did with their sensors for so many years,
exactly,
and
exactly,
allowed them to kind of create this entire layer of
exactly. You
something
have
very
to,
similar to a ChatGPT. It works very similar to that mod, which is so cool.
exactly, exactly. Like if you try and train an agent on the historic price of Bitcoin, it's like one path. So it's not very effective. Like if you're training an autopilot, you don't just do one drive, right? You need to train it on millions and millions of different uh, paths
Data
or
points, yes.
simulations. Um, and then, yeah, the autopilot can train on all those simulations and improve its overall performance. So that's what Synth
Yeah.
does. It gets like hundreds of simulations every hour based on the potential price path of Bitcoin. And yeah, it gives agents a way to train on this.
I again, before we jump into the agent meta, we'll explore that in depth. But just going back to the opportunity of DeFi, clearly that's the first and only like product market fit beyond the big casino that we've all built together. My other question is, there's a lot of different like alt L1s coming out who are also trying to build like something like Beta just announced their mainnet and their own like proof of liquidity model. So there is emergent competition in this space. Also, like historically, DeFi has been like participants have been mercenary. They move their capital based on where the reward they chase the rewards. And so, in anticipation of upcoming rewards from a Beta airdrop, a lot of liquidity kind of moves. As an example, so how do you see, move? How would you change this behavior of these stakeholders and eventually move to a state where you have stickiness and you wear a product manager's hat and you think about those fundamentals that they think about when they build their products, like what journey do we need to take to get there? Or because we still have like the market size hasn't increased. Rather, if you look at from 2021 tops, TVL has actually gone down from 170, 160, 70 at the top to almost 115, 20 billion. I don't know what it is today, but that was the last number I checked.
Mm.
How do you drive that stickiness? How do you expand the market and change behavior, customer behavior.
And also, you mentioned that for L1 and L2s, the North Star metric is changing from TVL to user acquisition and retention. But like Rohit mentioned, that the market size isn't increasing a lot. So how does that happen? Like, how do DefAI or AI agents are bringing acquiring more users or helping in user retention?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think that if we look at crypto from like the bigger picture or finance in general, right? People do things to make money, right? Like that's it. And
Yeah.
if we continuously have a casino, people will play, but if they're always losing money, they won't want to come back very often, right? And
True.
if we have meme coins being launched that pump and then within 24 hours go completely down only,
You mean within 24 seconds?
essentially like the way DeFi finance, the reason why anyone is here in both those industries is because they're going to make money, right? And I think what we've seen recently is that there have been lots of meme coins projects which have grown extremely quickly, and then within 24 hours they've been down only and
Yeah.
made
a,
significant losses for people. So
a friend of mine calls them crime coins.
yeah, crime coins, right? So like if we have this if this is the main narrative that's being pushed out to the average person, then yeah, it's bad, right? Like most people are losing money. They're not going to come back very often. Um, DeFi has, grown a lot, and it started to provide different products, which are, yeah, which can be very useful, and can provide consistent yields for users. So the only barrier of why people wouldn't use these is because there's some complexity around coming on chain, moving assets from one protocol to another. But there are there are many people in the world who would love to be able to earn 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% yield on USDC on a stable coin. It's just very hard for them to access, and crypto still is hard to access. So our goal is to build tools, build this AI layer, which will enable people to come on chain very easily, will enable people to, essentially start to explore much more. Um, and access much more opportunities in a more simple way. Like we're seeing in Web 2 now, like I don't know how many users ChatGPT has, but it's probably in the tens of millions, maybe 15, maybe 100 million. Um, People are used to this interface now, right? This interface makes sense to them to prompt and then take an action based on a prompt or based on answer from a prompt. So can we build similar experiences that people trust, people are used to, that help them interact with the complexity of DeFi? Can we abstract that away? And
One more
yeah,
question before we dive into the whole AI agent thing, and that's to talk about that. But there is this general conversation going on in on X these days, which is L2s are hurting Ethereum, right? Have you seen that?
yeah,
That they extract value out of Ethereum but don't contribute. And so there was also a meme where Justin Tron was talking about how L2s should be taxed. What's your general view about this kind of point of view and thinking around the whole layer two scaling approach that Ethereum has committed itself to as against to Solana, which is one monolithic chain, so no problem with fragmentation, liquidity, mm, kind of breaking down, and then also causing like the cost of your trading to go up because slippage is higher and those kind of challenges exist.
absolutely. So I think that there's like a lot of nuance which gets missed, right? If like at one point everyone was calling for Ethereum or Ethereum made it very clear that it would scale via L2s. This was the goal, right? Ethereum's going to scale by L2s. This is how it's going to scale. And teams went off and built L2s to help Ethereum scale. And I think like the question is, what does it mean help Ethereum scale? So scale the EVM as a technology. Have L2 succeeded? Yeah, 100%. There's, I don't know how many more people, but millions of people now using EVM technology. Does it mean scale more transactions? Yeah, it's definitely succeeded scaling more transactions. Has it scaled revenue? No, it hasn't. At one point, it was scaling revenue and increasing revenue before the Denken upgrade. But that upgrade meant that, yeah, blobs came into play and transaction fees and the fees that they would pay Ethereum for the Ethereum's DA layer dropped massively, right? Like I think by a factor of like 100 or 200 or 300.
Yeah.
So previously, before this upgrade, which happened last February, March, um, users on mode base were paying 20, 30 cents a transaction, with a high proportion of this going to Ethereum for DA and burning ETH essentially. After this upgrade, people were paying a cent, maybe half a cent for a transaction. So Ethereum kind of cannibalized its own business model. And I'm not sure whether the expectation was that there would be like thousands of L2s and blob space would fill up and it would become more sustainable. I think it's like extremely hard to model this. Um, but I think that, yeah, L2s are definitely underpaying the L1. And I think it also is difficult because there are different data availability layers. So if the L1 fee was high, potentially more people would use Celestia EigenDA and would, avoid paying those fees. I think it's something that's pretty difficult to kind of like say what's right or wrong. And I think most of it comes down to the fact that ETH price performance hasn't been as strong as people wanted. And therefore they're looking for reasons to kind of blame, like why isn't ETH $5,000,
Mm.
right? What reasons are there? Oh, there's these reasons. I think it makes sense, but I think there is a lot of nuance. And potentially there are other decisions that have been made or not been made within the Ethereum community that could have, I don't know, maybe made the situation better or worse. But yeah, Ethereum by default, by design, is kind of always going to cannibalize its own business model. It's not there to make money. It's not there to pump the price of ETH, right? It's there to build technology and scale the technology. So yeah, I think it has been the right decision in that regard.
I sometimes feel like very few folks in this space care about decentralization. Um, and that has been the primary driver behind how Ethereum thinks about its technology. And so by outsourcing everything else, it has become a challenge for them because now the conversation, as you said, is about Ethereum's price versus Solana, which has captured so much of the like Bitcoin. You go back like 2021, 2022, massive volatility, but now it's at an all-time high. Same goes with Solana's trajectory in terms of price action.
Hmm.
We haven't seen similar price action happen on Ethereum, and that kind of is frustrating a lot of people who are holding, the bags, thinking, okay, we thought this is going to be the foundational magic computer, but something is kind of amiss in the whole model of how value capture happens for Ethereum and for
But
it
I
to
think
remain
this is
sustained
because
as a
of the
sustainable project.
I think this is because of the short-term thinking in the crypto market because everybody here, mostly people here, are to make money. They're, as James said, like they're gambling, right? Like it's a big casino. So they want to make money in this cycle, take out the money and be rich by the next cycle. So there are very few people who have
I, but
actually
I,
decentralization in their at their focus.
I
So
also feel like,
Ethereum,
so, it's, huh,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I just feel like with Solana, none of us cared enough to build like a meme coin casino, which drove a lot of attention and energy because I don't know why this has happened, why people gamble so much there. It's just perplexes me. Anywho, moving on to agents now, James, I want to start first with you because every time I talk to a founder, they give me a definition of AI agents and seems to be no overarching consensus. Seems to be an understanding of what they are supposed to be, autonomous AI machines capable of reasoning and thinking, and then on top of that, as an agent, to be your agent to do something on your behalf. But start with a simple definition for an average normie what an agent is first, and then we build from there.
Absolutely. So an agent is a piece of software. Um, the agents we're talking about are often software within like a smart contract or a smart contract wallet that will do tasks or can, yeah, run transactions on behalf of users based on new types of information, data, which are fed to them. So I think the difference is like a bot, you tell it when ETH hits $3,000, sell this for USDC, right? And you can say that's a bot can do that. An agent can do that. A bot can also do that, right? A simple bot that you can uh, build very quickly. Whereas an agent, you could say, model, like take this data feed that has, the volatility of ETH, and when you see volatility drop below a certain level, I want you to, or look at my portfolio, manage my portfolio based on like the volatility of ETH. And it will look at your portfolio. It will look at all the different coins you have in your portfolio, and it will think about what to do with them at certain points to protect like your downside. It could also, yeah, look at things like trying to maybe there's like more volatility in Bitcoin than Ethereum, so it might have a different strategy for each of those assets. It might not like move both of them into stable coins. There's things like that that are much more complex that like an agent can do, whereas like a bot can't do. Um, and I think that's like the difference. It's like this aspect of reasoning, this aspect of like intelligence that hasn't been programmed by the user, right? They just ask this agent, the agent has this intelligence or access this intelligence within um within the software, the code, and it goes off and executes these transactions or tasks without the user asking it to.
Okay. One question that stands out of this, actually, I have a few, but let's go one by one. First, like, can you help us visualize in a typical flow in a DeFi transaction today that we do, a user does? How does it look like today without an agent being available? And take any example, like he's trying to find the highest yield for his stable coin that he
Mhm.
wants. What does that look like today? And then when an agent comes in, what changes in that entire user flow from a UI or UX user experience perspective that makes it better improved for him?
Absolutely. So if you're looking to maximize stablecoin yield, you might be looking to be an LP and on a DEX, um, LPing stablecoins, and you're earning yield. Um, as a user right now, you will go to lots of different dexes. You will look up the yield, um, and you will put your assets into the one with the highest yield. I would expect the DEX from Lending Protocol, right? It's probably what you'll do. And then you'll just need to monitor that, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if the yields change, you'll move your assets. And maybe if like there will be a cost to move your assets, right? From transferring one asset to another, you might have USDC and USDC, and there's USDT and USDC, and there's a cost to exchange those. And you might need to, if you're like on a Uni V3 position, um, you might have 80% USDT and 20% USDT in the pool. And that's how you're maximizing your yield. Also, on a lending protocol, there might be a high yield on DAI, right? Or SUSDS, I think it's called now. So you might want to move into that asset. So there are like lots of different things, and there's kind of a lot of complexity when you're just looking at stablecoin yield, right? And also, like, as a user, you're probably like, do I want to do these like 5 transactions to earn like an
Mm.
extra like 0.5% APY per year? Maybe not, right? And maybe it's difficult to calculate like the cost of moving one asset to another asset, because there might be a bit of slippage. There might be a transaction fee you have to pay. So the transaction fee might be 0. 0.3%, and you're only getting an extra 0.5% yield. Whereas an agent will kind of do all of this for you, right? So it'll constantly be monitoring all these protocols, and it will be looking at like the transaction fee to move assets between these protocols, trade assets in and out, move them in between these liquidity pools or lending protocols, and it'll be making these decisions for you, and then running the transactions when it makes sense, when it comes to optimizing yield. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's super useful because it basically just gives us more time to, I don't know, hang on the beach or do whatever humans want to do.
And a follow up to this is like the brain is offline. The brain is still whatever that model is, a DeepSeek or a ChatGPT, Open O3, O4,
Hmm.
whatever it is, or any other. That's offline. There is a certain cost involved in using that brain to do the inference or the thinking for you or the reasoning for you. When in a traditional DeFi setup, the smart contract with all the code is on chain. And so to interact with that money, you have a fee market, which is where you're spending gas. But now you add this additional cost layer. Does the does this kind of increase the expenditure for an average user who's trying to do this? And two, um, how do these like agent creators, then essentially incentivize or earn the revenue necessary to offer this service? Because I mean that's a fixed cost for them on the other side, and so on this side now it all depends on how many times that agent is used for them to generate that revenue. Talk a little bit about this challenge of kind of scaling this with external dependencies outside of the blockchain and smart contract that typically goes into it, and how does that balance out?
Absolutely. So yeah, when we think of like on-chain and off-chain and agents and the models they're using, I think the key thing is for people to know, like it's fine that like agents are using lots of different data sources, right? So you might have a trading agent and it trades based on social feed, like Twitter feeds, or like it trades based on news feeds, right? It's like watching Bloomberg or the Bloomberg terminal, and when there's an announcement, it'll immediately make a decision, right? So it's like could be based on sentiment, right? You have this agent, it's a trading agent, it's trading on chain. Um, and when it sees an article with positive sentiment, it moves USDC into Bitcoin. When it sees negative sentiment, it does the opposite, right? So we're continually using like all these different data sources to make agents more smart. I think the key thing to know is like how do we verify that the actions that agent take on chain are actually uh, the correct action that it wanted to do based on the data that happened off chain, right? And there's many different ways and solutions for this. So some people are using trusted execution environments, some teams using ZKML. I mean, and right now, like it's more expensive to kind of do this verifiability layer, right? Um, than really like the reasoning or the inference. That's not very expensive right now. The costs aren't too high. So yeah, there's a lot of experimentation here, and I think that's really the key thing, because if an agent does something wrong or something you as the user think is wrong, you want to know what went wrong, how it went wrong, how can that stop, how can that not go wrong in the future? Equally, if it does something very right, you're like, oh my God, how did it know to do this like amazing trade, right? You also want to know why, what data source was it using, so it can hopefully do more of that in the future. So that's something
But
where, yeah,
that's the challenge with AIs, because it's unlike blockchains, more deterministic rule based systems. We don't exactly know why it gives out a certain output,
Hmm.
right? Because for this, if you prompt the same thing to ChatGPT, it
Hmm.
doesn't give you the same answer. There is some differences, right? So, how do you ensure these guarantees, and how do you then work back on and double down? Okay, these were the kind of answers that I was looking for. Like, what's that reinforcement process today?
Yeah, I mean, it should be based on the model, right? So if you ask the same thing to ChatGPT, it's using the same model, right? Every time. In theory, uh, you should be able to know, based on the model, like how that works. Um, so, for example, if you're using this synthetic data from the synth subnet, you can go back and see the data it was using at this exact point in time. And you can say, okay, this is the data that it was given, and this is a decision it made. The model for that data, yeah, it's more difficult to know, right? And then you've got to know like how the model is built and how the model is created. So yeah, that is a bit more difficult for sure. Um, and yeah, I think that's also something like things are evolving constantly, right? So as these AI agents, or AI models, um, learn and become more and more powerful, for sure, like the decision that an agent made a month ago might be different from the decision it makes now. And it also might be very difficult to understand why it did something at the time, but maybe in a week or in a month, it might have made sense. So yeah, this is something we're all trying to balance right now as we build this stuff out.
Hmm. Let's go back to the synth bit tensor subnet. Talk about why it was required. You spoke of synthetic data. What data it is, like what specific information is does this synthetic data capture? Why bit tensor? Why did you create a subnet for this? What's the utility there? And how does this help then the agent builders to build better DeFi agents? What kind of DeFi agents are we talking about that this specific subnet will help them create through this data?
Absolutely. So I'll start with like what it is, right? What synthetic data is. I think we've touched on it before, but essentially, synthetic data is lots of data, right? A load of data based on potential paths. So as we said with like the autopilot, you train an autopilot in simulated worlds, right? In simulations, millions of simulations, and you catch like loads of edge cases. So the autopilot, when it goes on the road, is much better at understanding uh, all the variables that exist and reacting to its environment. So when we train agents from financial data, we often use synthetic data because we can train on like lots of different potential paths and data points. And that's super, super important because historical data doesn't give us um, enough data to train on. It's just simply like there's not enough data. So, yeah, synth subnet, essentially, it gets miners who are data scientists, mathematicians, model builders to submit data every 1 hour on the next 24 hours. They give 100 potential price paths for the next 24 hours. And yeah, you can see a visualization if you go to mode.network/synth of these like price paths. And what this does is it helps model volatility, which is possible. Like if someone says to you, I know the price of Bitcoin in 24 hours, they're probably lying, right? At best, because no one knows the price of Bitcoin in 24 hours. Um, if people knew exactly like at what prices were going to be, they'd be billionaires and they wouldn't be bothering to do any other work, especially not be on a subnet, right?
True that.
Um, so like, so we can't know price, but we can model, or we can get better at modeling volatility. Um, and that's really the goal with this subnet. It's thinking like probabilistically. It's going, okay, we've modeled out like these potential paths, and we think there is a 50 or 60% chance Bitcoin will hit all-time high in the next 24 hours, or we think there's a 2% chance. Now, this is like really, really useful for agents and for people modeling options for all different types of like roles in finance. So in TradFi, this is used very commonly to price options, right? They look at like all the potential scenarios for an asset. If XYZ happens, then they can give a price for an option. So this is an important thing. Also, like thinking about portfolio management. For agents, it's very important to have some forecast, right? Maybe there's going to be a period of volatility coming up. So imagine we're just before the presidential election. You can imagine like the volatility forecast for Bitcoin being crazy, right? If Trump wins, it could go up 20%. If Trump loses, it could go down 20%. On a normal day, you probably won't see that much volatility or expected volatility. So if you're a very risk averse person, and you've told your agent to be risk averse and you hold a load of Bitcoin, they'll probably say, yeah, we're coming into a period of extreme volatility. So it probably makes sense for you to just take money off the table, right? Or to hedge your position and decide what to do after we pass this period of extreme volatility. So that's kind of why the data is useful and how it's being used, or how we're seeing it be used so far.
You brought up that there've been a few hackathons that you've done. There was an accelerator program as well. So there's a bunch of teams who are working very closely to build these agents. Can you talk about some interesting things that are coming out of them? Also give a shout out to a few teams who have their agents already live on Node today that people can go out there and check it around. What's next, like what's coming up next? Because where does this idea that there will be hundreds of agents come in? Because I can't just one or two agents do all of these things that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a few different things. People are going to have multiple agents working for them. And I think this is something that's become like a bit like convoluted, is like this idea of agent. A lot of people think of agent like agent has a meme coin, right? But for us, it's very different. We're thinking of agents more in the Web 2 sense, right? You're going to have agents doing stuff for you, right? Like your personal assistant for different things. There's probably going to be hundreds of specialized domain specific agents. So you might have an agent to manage your stablecoin yield. You might have an agent to manage your Bitcoin yield. You might have an agent that trades for you. You might have an agent that does yield farming with ETH. And these will probably come from different protocols or different agent builder apps. And yeah, we're trying to support as many of those currently on Mode. So we have Giza, which is a stablecoin agent. We work very closely with Olas or Tonolas, who have built out Modius, which is a trading agent. Amplified team, a BTC Fi agent. And there's literally like, 10, 20, 50, 100 more coming. So we're super excited to share them all with everyone.
Is
Yeah.
is this like so many agents because it's hard for one team to kind of build so many different agents? Is this like a data challenge or focus issue? What is it?
So I think, it's really like DeFi, like there's a lot of complexity in DeFi, and building a trading agent that's actually good requires a lot of effort, right? So we're very close with the Almanac team. These guys are extremely intelligent quants, and they really understand what it takes to build a robust trading infrastructure and agent, right? And it's hard. Equally, like when you think of yield farming agents, um, these are very, there's complexity in this, right? You're managing multiple assets, you're managing multiple protocols, everything has to be done at the smart contract level. It's not like extremely simple to just go and build it, right? And this is why I think domain specific agents are going to be much more successful than these like super generalized agents.
Are we going to see like if when we look at I mean it's not completely an agent because it can't do decisions for you, but let's take the example of ChatGPT. Your co-pilots in the real world that pretty much are these general purpose AI
Hmm.
solutions which you use for a variety of things, right? I use it to learn. I use it to better brainstorm on my work. Let's say if I want to design a I don't know, a new launch strategy for 100 million grants. I use it to give it information of everything that I've done so far, what kind of new category that I want to fund, and then use that to kind of generate information. So that's one part of it. Then you have these like specialized agents coming in the form of which are just focused on like, if I want to write better code, you go to use Cursor or whatever it is. If I want to do whatever XYZ things better, do you see like there's going to be this one big co-pilot chat GPT kind of a thing, which all of us use for 80% of whatever we want to do in DeFi. And then you're going to have these like specialized agents. And I'm not even engaging with these specialized agents. I am just using this Copilot, which has multimodal capabilities for me to engage. And it then goes out there in the market to discover these,
Hmm.
like, I don't know, agents, and then delegates work to them. Is this how we'll see engagement of? Because for me to find and discover hundreds of apps today is difficult. So I don't imagine a future where I'll be engaging with hundreds of agents. Maybe is this more agent to agent interaction rather than agent to human interaction at scale, with only two or three agents being the primary mode of engagement, while the rest are just agent to agenting interactions.
Yeah, I think that's a very possible future, right? There might be one platform that's like your all-in-one it could be a finance platform, right? And you can deposit $100 and it can decide that it's going to use a stock trading agent, right, with part of your assets. And then it's going to use a meme trading agent or a BTC trading agent with the other part of your assets, right? And it might just be one platform. You put in $100 and then that, like, yeah, that platform, that agent uses 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 different other agents for you. Could be an unlimited number to do multiple things. But I think as we are human, it all comes back to like, what is your risk profile, right? And what do you want to do as a human? And that's something that, uh, yeah, we're still trying to understand, because you can't just say make money, right? Because if you go to any financial advisor and you say, hey, I want to make money, they're going to be like, well, what risks do you want to take? What assets are you interested in? Do you want to hold gold? Do you want to hold Bitcoin? Do you want to hold, like, what do you want? Some are more risky than others. Do you want to put it in a savings account and earn, I don't know, 3, 4, 5% a year? Um, but that's often not why people come to crypto, right? People come because they see outsized gains, and you might say, actually, I want to put 10% of my portfolio in meme coins. Um, Therefore, there'll be an agent specialized for that. So I do think, like, yeah, an overall platform for this can work, and it could be agent to agent, but it's going to be still very like that. There will be domain specific agents which excel, and yeah, their customers will be humans or will be other agents. That's very possible.
Talk about the token behind this project, right? Is it the mode token? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, so the mode
Yeah.
token is
So,
our, yeah.
yeah, what is the role this token will play in this agentic economy? Is this going to be like, Virtual started using their virtual token to create pools for agents to launch that token. It was the
Mhm.
base currency for trading. Is that going to be one of the use case? Is this to incentivize folks to start engaging with, these agentic solutions and, kind of use as the cold start, sort of gold start problem for adoption? How are you thinking? Because traditionally L2s don't need a separate token. They have it for
Mhm.
governance and other things, but we've seen them kind of go really flat. Arbitrum is one case, Optimism one case. They haven't been
Yeah.
able to sustain themselves. Base doesn't have any token, and literally, if you look at if you go look at growth data, on-chain data, number of transactions, active wallets, volume, everything is
Mhm.
kind of going pretty well for them. What do you see the role A of this token in this new thing that you're building? And then just your general thoughts on L2s needing a token in the first place.
Yeah, so Mo token, like the goal of Mo token, is to direct ecosystem incentives. So we actually built out this thing called VE mode, which is vote escrow mode. So users stake their mode, and then they distribute their mode. Sorry, they distribute votes, and depending on the votes that teams receive, ecosystem teams, they get incentives to use however they want to grow. So this is pretty cool. This has worked really well. Like, yeah, Mode token is a governance token, but the key thing is its use to direct ecosystem incentives. Um,
But do
we
I do I do I see like folks then coming together and uh, directionally moving incentives to, I don't know, teams who they favor? Do you see that kind of thing also just evolving into favoritism or those kind of issues?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a bribe system as well, so teams can bribe for rewards. So it creates quite interesting dynamics, and it's been really cool to watch this kind of play out within the ecosystem. And soon we're going to have agents as well here, so agents can, yeah, request
Bribe
incentives, earn
bribe
mo,
users to
vote for
incentivize me.
themselves. Yeah, it's going to be cool. So bribe users, yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean. I
What's the
think
broader
like
thesis around the mode token and
yeah,
this new agent fi opportunity?
yeah, I mean there's a lot coming. I think it's difficult to say exactly what. I think one interesting thing that we didn't really expect is we have Mo token. Mo token is going to be the core. We're focusing on driving as much value to the ecosystem and Mo token holders. But yeah, BitTensor's launching very soon something called DTAO, which gives every subnet a token. This could essentially make BitTensor into like a virtual style platform where there's a market value given to the teams building on BitTensor, so the subnets. So yeah, it could be very crazy times ahead for this. We're going to have subnet token 50. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Wow. Okay. This
and
was news to me.
yeah, this is going to be quite an interesting dynamic shift because yeah, we're going to see hundreds of teams um, launching subnets. I think there'll be like there's currently 64, maybe there'll be 128 by the end of the year, and we will see really interesting dynamics start to play out um, with these. With these subnets, as like the market will be able to get Tau and use that Tau to buy tokens, buy subnet tokens or stake. I think they're calling it staking for the subnet alpha token. So yeah, there's lots of opportunity. I think AI right now is uh, it's really like it's really like a weird time. Like I think the AI meta was so strong the last few months. DefAI as well. I think the market has definitely turned um negatively, right? So like prices have dropped across the board. And I think, yeah, this is like the time where you're gonna see like really like the true builders come out, the people who are here for long term, the people who are here just for a quick flip will leave. Um, and yeah, everyone's gonna rise up, I think, in the next few months, and there's gonna be some really incredible stuff shipped. So super exciting.
Okay, I want to move to this idea of interoperability because yield doesn't live only in the superchain ecosystem cluster or the zk sync cluster or even the Ethereum cluster. It's everywhere out there.
Hmm.
And for me as a user, the ideal like state is my money goes to the place where I get the best yield. I
Hmm.
don't care where it is. I don't care which chain it is. Um, is that like? Do you feel like AI agents will be able to bridge this barrier and simplify the whole challenge behind cross the complexities of cross chain, the complexities of um, fragmentation of this capital across space, but rather go for the best yields. And so, if that yield exists outside of the cluster that mode operates, it still can go out there and give me the best price for like value for my money. What are your general thoughts about interoperability and this entire like challenge of DeFi when it comes to fragmentation of as a
Yeah,
result of
I
so
mean,
many
like
chains?
right now, like agents are bridging. That's fairly straightforward. As like they're using intent layers. So we have an AI terminal you can go to on Mode. You can ask it to, bridge 10 USDC from base to ETH. It does that. It's more like an intent. It's an intent layer called Brian knows. Really cool. That we've integrated. Earn yield on, bridge and earn yield is possible. I think it all comes back to like the complexity and the risk adjusted yield, right? So whales right now, they're very much like focused on um like I don't know, if they have $100 million, they probably only want to use one or two different protocols. They might have their own security team that does research on this. And so I think you're still going to have like, I think it's going to be rare that people say, hey, here's $100, do whatever you want to earn me yields, right? It's still going to be like, use these chains, use these protocols. Um, and I think that, yeah, it's all about like this risk management when it comes to building out agents that do more complex transactions.
Now, the application of these agents beyond just DeFi, like we've been calling, using the word autonomous in DAOs for like 5 years now. But let's face it, with its its inability to grow has partially been because there's just so much bureaucracy involved. So there's this idea that AI, agents in the middle and humans at the edges when it comes to DAOs in general. What are your thoughts about the expansion of this agent meta beyond, DeFi use cases to other elements of the crypto, chain of other use cases?
Yeah, I think that I mean, like, we might see, I mean, well, we're already kind of seeing it, right? Like, lending protocols like Aave, Morpho, they're moving to multiple chains. Um, and they're also working on this abstraction layer too, right? We're in this place where, yeah, everyone is trying to abstract everything right now, right? Like, um, and I think agents are going to be like the ultimate layer on top, right, of this. So it might be like you just deposit into, your lending protocols, like your top five lending protocols. It might be like you might not know which chain, right? That might be abstracted completely. It might be that you just ask to get yield on a certain chain, and then the type of protocols on that chain are abstracted completely. It might be that you just say dexes and then dexes across all the chains you start to be an LP on. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone knows exactly which way it's going to go, but it's probably going to be a combination of all of them. But yeah, interoperability is kind of getting solved, but kind of isn't, right? We have we've gone from like, oh, let's have one unified layer, to now having multiple layers. Um,
And then chain abstract them
yeah, exactly.
and create an abstraction layer on top so we don't recognize they exist.
Exactly. So I mean, yeah, I'm obviously like pretty close to the Optimism ecosystem. I think they're doing awesome work. I know Polygon, CDK, super cool. ZK Sync also building interesting stuff. I don't think there's like a clear winner yet, but we're getting very close to that. So yeah, let's see how it plays out.
Now, one question around the end user. Do you feel more like hardcore, like institutional degens and degens? They will be the first adopters of AI, DefAI, or it's going to be we will finally expand DeFi to net new users and just expand the whole pool. How do you see this playing out? What's your strategy? What are you going after first?
Um, like our focus right now is really on like making sure the base layer of Mode is strong, supporting ecosystem apps, focusing on agent builders and agent teams as much as possible, making sure that they have all the resources, support they need to build like new, interesting innovations. And yeah, we want to support them to grow as much as possible. If they want to go completely multi-chain, be everywhere, that's pretty cool. Why not? I think that yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how things play out in the next few months. Really interesting. But yeah, it's yeah, I mean, there's so much to focus on right now. I think the key thing we're excited about is really like new agents, new type of innovation coming from these teams building.
Amazing. Okay, I want to wrap this interview now, James.
I
Thank you
just have
so
one
much.
last question. You
Please.
talked about synthetic data. I would love to know more about what is synthetic data because is it similar to what Tesla does? For example, they drive these cars and they feed a lot of synthetic data to these cars because they can't, like put these cars on the road directly. So DeFi, I think, is very DefAI is very similar to this because you cannot just directly give these agents to in the market and like give them money to trade. So is that similar to that? Like, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's like yeah, it's simulations, right? It's data is like simulated data, which enables agents to train on. So I think yeah, the key thing with this is that the synth subnet is building out this resource for agents to get better at forecasting, better at like modeling volatility. And that's super useful for agents in general when they want to like look at like what's going to happen in the market, what they should be doing next. So it gives them this like yeah, predictive intelligence, which is currently lacking from a lot of agents.
got it. All right, you can wrap up the podcast now. Right.
Okay,
Awesome.
yeah, I want to wrap up. And James, I want to give you 15 seconds. If there is a team who is looking at the DeFi space, wants to build an agent and wants to work with Mode, how can they get started?
Absolutely. Just ping one of our team, ping me, ping Fede on Twitter. Let us know what you're building and what your kind of vision is for it. And yeah, we're happy to discuss further. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank
James.
you